as we had our conversation with our real estate agent, Jim Moore from Lexington, Kentucky. And I thought I would just, for 15 minutes or so, give you a frame of reference for questions, right? So we have a brand new resource that was launched about 2 weeks ago. It's called Connect, and it's brand new content for a brand new world, for a brand new economy. And one of the session titles for one of the videos is the idea of questions rule. Questions rule. And what I think really matters is a couple of things here. Number one, if you ask better questions, and if you have deeper conversations, you actually create faster trust, which removes the tension in anybody wanting to do business with you. And it actually accelerates the relationship. It actually accelerates trust to the point where people say yes more quickly. A seller will list more quickly. A buyer will buy more quickly. A borrower will agree to financing more quickly. It's really, really critical that we understand the value of questions. I think for I think for everybody watching, you've heard this in your career, right? We all know that if we're sales professionals, we've got to ask questions. But I don't think that we go deep enough. I don't think we ask the kind of questions that really make an impact. And so I created this document this morning. We're going to go ahead and post the link after this episode is over. And I've given you 6 or 7 different samples of kind of the angle on which you would want to address asking better questions. But here's the reason, the why behind questions. The why behind questions is that you and I are really solutionists. I want you to think about that word. We are in the solution business. We're not in the selling business, right? We're not here to sell a home. We're not here to do a loan. I mean, we are. That's the product we have. But at the end of the day, we're actually here to solve people's challenges, problems, desires, and opportunities. And that's essentially the role that we play. And if we do that on a deeper level, if we do that on a level that our competition doesn't do it on, then we win the business. And when you win the business, then you win the option for loyalty, right? And that means every borrower is going to use you every time they need financing. They're going to tell all their friends and family about you. That means every seller is going to use you every time they want to list the property. They're going to use you every time they want to buy another property. It's really important to understand that the way to have deeper relationships that really create repeat business and loyalty is to slow the conversation down, to ask the questions that are deeper questions, and then get that kind of response. So I have 2 keys that I want to share with you first, and then I want to maybe share with you 3 or 4 stories that kind of talk a little bit about questions. So here's key number 1. You might want to write this down. Key number 1 is ask the questions that you have never asked so you can learn the things you have never learned, so you can solve the things you've never solved. If we truly are to be a bridge between client and knowledge, which is essentially what we do as lending professionals and real estate professionals, then you have to ask questions that you've never asked, because otherwise you're just in the masses, right? You're just like every other real estate agent, or just like every other lender or banker. There's no real differentiation. So ask the questions you haven't asked, and you need to think on this. I mean, like, you could take the weekend and you could write down 10 or 15 or 20 questions you've never asked that could get you information you've never had, that could put you in a position to solve in a way that you've never solved. So that's key number 1. Here's key number 2. When you ask the right questions, the right answers show up. And there's a really cool bridge between what I just said and getting the sale and getting the relationship. Sellers, buyers, borrowers close their own sales when you ask different questions that allow them to share with you what is super important to them, and then you show them how they're able to get that in a relationship with you. So one of the kind of barometers, if you're really asking the right questions, is a question should get you 2 to 4 minutes of intel. Okay, and so the right question, and then tell me more about what you mean by that. That deeper dive, every question you ask should get you 2 to 4 minutes of information. So if you have like 4 or 5 really solid questions, you could get 20 to 25 minutes of information. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here as we kind of go through this clinic and talk a little bit about kind of high level questions that can get you a lot of information to maybe deeper dives and a little bit more intentional kind of core questions. But 2 days ago, I had somebody that was referred to us that potentially would be a sales professional for our high trust advisor team. And so I got on the phone with this guy, and I've never met this guy. I've never heard this guy's voice. I haven't anything other than being referred to him is all that has happened, right? So I get on the phone with this guy, and there's about 30 seconds of pleasantries, just a quick exchange, rapport. And then I say, "So, Joe, tell me your story." And that was the question. That was it. It was just, tell me your story. And I sat in my car and I listened and I listened and I listened. And it was 11 minutes from the time I asked that question until Joe was done. And I had learned so much about him in 11 minutes. I can tell you right now that that is the type of question that changes everything. You can ask that question of a buyer. You can ask that question of a borrower. You can ask that question of a seller if it's the first time you've ever done business with them, and you're going to get a lot of intel. So I'll give you some more examples as we kind of go through this clinic. Several years ago, we were in Kauai, Hawaii, and we were having our Achieving Leadership Excellence Week. We do this usually every summer, and we have about 100 leaders there. And we were talking about connection. We were talking about leadership connection. And we got into a dialogue with one of the guys in the room. His name is Brian Frazier. Brian became a good friend of mine, and sadly, Brian was one of the first people killed at the Las Vegas massacre. It was really a tragedy. But I remember vividly when we were in Hawaii that we were talking about getting into the heart of the matter, right? Getting into this really deep kind of connection, right? Which is why we created a Connect experience. And Brian said, I think one of the great questions you can ask is, tell me what's on your screensaver on your phone and what's the story behind that? And it was a really interesting question. What's on your screensaver, and tell me the story. So we're just adding something, right? If you were to ask me what's on my screensaver and tell me the story, I would tell you that there's a lion on my screensaver. And the reason why I've chosen a lion is because I think lions represent forward action. I think they represent compelling dominance. I think they represent a level of just dominance, in the field of all animals that are, on the safari or on the plains. And also there's an illustration about lions getting out of the cage. And when they get out of the cage, their instinct to win and to dominate come back. And it's not from a negative standpoint. It's just, that's my screensaver. So we were talking, and Brian showed us his screensaver, and he had a picture of his little girl, Aubrey, and she had pigtails. And Brian said that the reason why she's on his screensaver is because his priority in life is to be a dad of purpose. And that was just super powerful, that if I had never met Brian and I saw his phone laying on a table and I said, "Hey, Brian, what's your screensaver? And tell me the story behind that," I would get to know Brian fairly quickly. So as you think about, questions, and you think about clinics of just practicing and gaining knowledge, I think that the most connected sales professionals ask the most unique questions, and they have become really good at listening for what the meaning is behind the person. When we hear people say people buy emotionally, we are this group, everybody watching Coffee with Todd on all of our social platforms and our website, hightrust.com/coffee-with-Todd. We're actually talking about how can we be at level 10? How can we be the best in the business that we want to be in? I don't know a lot of people that sit down and just think through the strategic questions that they should ask. So the clinic is about, coming up with those questions. So if I'm talking to a buyer, one of the great questions that I could ask is, tell me what's important about buying a new home to you. And that could foster a 5 to 10 minute dialogue that would really help you get emotionally connected and allow you to speak truth and to say the things that matter most when you're talking to that buyer. I could do the same thing with a seller. I could say, so help me understand what's important about selling your home to you. And the layering of going deep, tell me more about that. Tell me why that's important. Tell me more about that. Tell me why that's important. Tell me more about that. Tell me why that's important. What does that do for you? What does that give to you? Those are the kind of deep well questions that get you high trust, low tension, if any tension whatsoever, and engage people into a relationship with you. If I'm a broker owner, if I'm a branch manager, if I'm a head of national production for a mortgage company, if I'm a loan rep and I'm engaging a relationship with a real estate agent, or if I'm a leader to an employee, I could say to a real estate agent, Betty, imagine sitting with me a year from now, looking back, what has to have happened for you to be happy with our progress? And I want to go really deep on that. I want to take Betty all the way out to 12 months from now. And then what would have had to have happened in the last 12 months for you and I to be really, really excited about our progress? And it doesn't mean we don't talk for a year. It just means we're asking questions in advance that really help us engage and make a difference. If I'm a leader, like I do this with our new teams when we have new employees that join us, imagine a year from now sitting down with me. What needs to have happened over your first year with High Trust and our company for you to feel really excited about your role in our progress? And when I know the answers to those questions that are kind of out there, right? All I have to do is pay attention to that stuff because somebody has told me their deepest desire. At the end of the day, I think the importance of asking great questions is to determine really what matters. And, if you keep it really simple, asking great questions is not some sales tactic. It is what human beings desire. They desire, we are wired for connection. And what I know is that most salespeople talk themselves out of the sale because they don't do a good enough job asking the questions that matter. And there's even stats that say the longer a salesperson talks, the less likely the sale is to happen. So the only way for you to avoid talking too much and then taking talk time and turning it into listen time is to slow way down and ask different questions. If I'm a loan originator and I'm meeting with a borrower, here's a question that our elite members use all the time. And our elite is, I think we have 25 people that I personally coach during the year and are part of our really high-end coaching. We have 2 other levels, the master level, which is for originators and agents that are building teams. And then we have the producer level, which is for those same people who are solo and not yet building teams. But our elite is the best, right? And here's one of the questions that they ask all the time to a borrower. Regarding mortgage strategy, what is most important to you? Interest rate, monthly payment, or the overall lowest cost of financing this purchase? Just 3 questions, 1 question, 3 different elements, because we want to get to the core of the matter. We want to ask deep enough questions so that price and rate and things like that are less important in the conversation. And you want to do this in a way that gains favor and locks down trust. If you haven't seen this, you could go to YouTube and just type in $1 million listing, Ryan Surrant, Tyler Whitman. Okay. And last season there was a vignette where Ryan and Tyler were going after the same listing. They agreed with the sellers to the same price, and Tyler gave them time to think about it. And Ryan, in the middle of the kitchen with the husband and wife who were the sellers, asked one simple question. He said, "So, what are you passionate about?" And the seller answered the question with one word: creating. And they were kind of stuck because he had taken this essentially one bedroom apartment, which was huge, 4,000 square feet in New York City. And they had created this in their mind, this like piece of art, right? And so the difference between who got the listing and who did not get the listing, in my opinion, was one question that then allowed Ryan to begin to talk about, let's go ahead and get the best price we can for this. Let's find you another new canvas that you could go paint, and create your next project, your next dream home. And, it was just such a telling sign of the power of questions. And whether that was architected or not, I think that is who he is. What are you passionate about? So this is a 15-minute just clinic on really thinking about questions, just really thinking about the power of the questions you ask, and what you're learning and what you're gaining, and getting to a point where if you ask the right questions, you slow down the conversation, you increase the intensity with which you listen for opportunities to solve and provide solutions, then people are not only going to say yes, but they're going to stay with you. They're going to be loyal. And because you're able to connect on a deeper level, you're able to then engage those relationships for more and more referrals. So we're going to go ahead and post this link on all of our social platforms with this document. And I want you to make a commitment to yourself. Between now and Monday, I would like for you to think of 5 questions you've never asked. If you're an agent, buyers and sellers, if you're a lender, borrowers and agents and builders, whomever you work with, come up with 5 new questions by Monday that are the most carefully and yet emotionally architected by you, that can allow you to really get deep with people and learn what they want. And if you can do that, people are going to say yes. And the reason we're in selling is we're in selling to make people's dreams come true. So figure out what their dreams are, figure out what's important to them, figure out where they want to be a year or 2 or 3 from now. And if you do that, you're going to have a huge following, more than you already have right now. It's the questions that matter. It's the answers that you give to the questions you ask, and it's about connecting. Okay. So have a great weekend and stay strong, be positive, and we will join you again 9 o'clock Monday morning. Cheers.